Right, shalom, shalom. First, I'd like to give all praises unto Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Waharakar Kodash, and double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and honors to you brothers out there in the highways and the byways, teaching this word in all sincerity and in truth. Revelations 19 and 10, it says, "And I fell at his feet to worship him, and he said unto me, See thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant and of thy brethren that have the testimony of Yahushai. Worship God, for the testimony of Yahushai is the spirit of prophecy." Okay, and one thing that separates the Hebrew Israelites, us, the truth from the lies of Christianity is a consistency in the prophetic record. Like everything we break down is based upon prophecy, right? A true understanding and a consistent record. Whereas Christianity has to ignore prophecy. All right, it's not a consistent narrative. All right, and there's a big difference. So I want to go to Matthew 15 right now. You can go and read this again over when we're done. So it's the Matthew 15 and 21 says, "And Yahushua went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Zidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word, right? And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So the Lord confirmed that he only came for Israelites. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. All right. This was after. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs. And she said, Truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. And then Yahushua answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. Now, the goofy Christians will break this down as if this woman was a actual heathen of the seed of the heathen, and the Lord healed her because of her faith. When what's actually happening here is this woman was an Israelite, but she was an outcast. All right, she was an Israelite that was among the heathen, as opposed to the Israelites that were of Judea who were keeping the customs. She was outside of all that. Yet through her faith, the Lord still healed her. And that's why he said to his disciples, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel, because they wanted him to send her away, but he didn't do that. He tested her faith and tested her patience. And when she was found to be worthy, then he healed her, because she was of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Right? That is the true understanding. Now, we like to go into the artificial Idumea and see what's up. Now, excuse me for using the word Jesus, but it's obvious that if I use the correct name, the chat GBT might not understand the reference. So the real name of who they call Jesus is Yahweh Shai. Okay, that's established. It says we did it should have been why. Why did Yahweh Shai respond to his disciples in Matthew 15:24 when they asked him to send the woman of Canaan away? Raw, why did my phone do this crazy typos, man? Anyway, it says in Matthew 15:24, Yahweh Shai is responding not directly to his disciples, but to the overall situation involving the Canaanite woman who is asking him to heal her daughter. All right, it's incorrect. He was responding to his disciples. All right, but this is how the Christians interpret it. It says his words are a statement of his mission focus. Hear the context. The Canaanite woman comes to Yahweh Shai pleading for her demon-possessed daughter to be healed. The disciples urged Yahweh Shai to send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. In response to, they say in response to the situation, but it was actually in response to them, because they were the ones that spoke to him and he replied to them. But we'll keep reading. In response to the situation, Yahushua answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This statement is a response to the disciples' suggestion and to the woman's persistence. Now, how could it be a response, right, to both? Because one is asking for her petition to be fulfilled, and the other is asking for her to be sent away. If he was responding to the disciples, he was refusing to send her away. Well, what would that be based on? Well, he said, I'm not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. All right. So he was putting them up on game. Like, that's why he did not send her away. All right. Yahushua is clarifying his primary mission, his only mission, not primary, his only mission, primary. Like, there's some secondary mission for the heathen. During his earthly ministry to the Jews, the lost sheep of Israel. Now, not to the Jews, because again, the lost sheep of Israel represents all the 12 tribes and not just the Jews. However, this sets up the powerful turning point in the story. The woman persists, showing great faith, and Yahushua ultimately grants her request, praising her faith. So to directly answer your question, Yahushua responded by saying, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, emphasizing his mission focus, but not as a harsh rejection, rather as part of a larger teaching moment on the faith and persistence. So I said, would it not be more consistent that the woman was an Israelite descendant scattered among Canaan? That's a thoughtful and insightful question, and you're not alone in asking it. Some readers and scholars have considered whether the Canaanite woman in Matthew 15:21 and 28 might have been an Israelite descendant living among the Canaanites, especially in light of how Yahushua ultimately responds to her faith. All right. The text itself, it says, and behold, a Canaanite woman from the region came out and was crying, have mercy upon me, O Lord, son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon. She explicitly is called a Canaanite, a term that historically refers to a non-Israelite peoples in the region, long-standing enemies of Israel. The Gospel of Mark's parallel passage, Mark 7 and 26, calls her a Syrophoenician by birth. This suggestion is ethnically not Jewish. Yeah, the scriptures describe her as a woman of Canaan, but that doesn't mean that she's a descendant of Canaan. She could have just been dwelling among them. All right, let's carry on. Yahushua's response. This affirms his initial focus on Israel, but it doesn't necessarily mean the woman was of Israel. However, she continues to press him, and ultimately he praises her faith and grants her request, saying, O woman, great is your faith, be it done for you as you desire. Theological implication. You raise a good point. If Yahushua came only to the lost sheep of Israel, yet he helps this woman, does that suggest that she was among those lost sheep? A few views exist. A literal view, which is the most traditional view, which is the lie, is that she was a Gentile, and this passage shows the expansion of Yahushua's mercy beyond Israel. Again, there's no prophetical basis for this. This is just added in, foreshadowing the gospel spread to the nations. Her use of Son of David suggests faith in Israel's Messiah, despite not being Jewish, right? Alternative view, the minority view, which is the true view, some suggest that she may have been an Israelite descendant, perhaps from the northern tribes scattered. She could have been northern tribes. She could have been one of the Hellenized. Could have been a variety of reasons how she could have been scattered in that region among the nations, a lost sheep in that sense. Listen to this. This aligns with Old Testament prophecies about Israelites dispersed among the nations returning to God. So do you see that the minority view, which is the true view, fits more prophetically in with the scriptures, with the spirit, than the traditional view? The traditional view doesn't fit into the scriptures. It's not consistent with the narrative of the Bible and the prophetic record. Do you understand? It says, however, there is no textual evidence in the gospel that directly identifies her as an Israelite descendant. The evangelists go out of their way to identify her as a non-Israelite, emphasizing the radical inclusion of someone outside the covenant. Why do they call it a radical? What does the word radical mean? A radical. The reason they have to say it's radical is because it's something that's not consistent with what the scriptures say. All right, it's come out of nowhere. All right, the Salaki is radical. Oh, I wanted to look up radical. Radical, right? It means especially of change or action relating to affecting the fundamental nature of something. Right? It's radical. It's way out there. It's completely off course for what the scriptures is saying. All right. However, the true understanding, right, lines up with what's already was prophesied in the scriptures. And this is the difference. This is why we can teach what we teach with boldness, because the scriptures backs us up. Our understanding of the New Testament is based upon what is written in the Old Testament. Christianity's understanding of the New Testament is they've just made that up. It doesn't have no basis in the prophecies. All right. It's a radical inclusion of someone outside the covenant. Yeah, you bringing in someone that isn't an actual descendant of Israel is radical as hell, because there's no basis for it. Conclusion: while it's not impossible she could have been an Israelite descent living among Canaanites, the plain reading of the text strongly presents her as a Gentile. The theological force of the story is that even outsiders who have great faith are welcomed by Yahweh Shai, a powerful preview of the gospel reaching all nations. So your suggestion is consistent with the broader biblical themes, like the lost sheep of Israel scattered, but the text seems more focused on showing the faith, not ethnicity, is what brings someone into the blessing of God's kingdom. But yes, it is the faith. But the faith, you have to be an Israelite first before the faith works. You have to be an Israelite for any of this to apply to you. This is the thing. It is showing that she showed great patience and faith, and the Lord blessed her. But she was an Israelite. It's just that she was an outcast. She was outside of the commonwealth. Okay. Now it says, so her being an Israelite descendant is more consistent with biblical prophecy. What does it say? Yes. Yes. The understanding that we preach is more consistent with what is recorded in the scriptures. From a prophetic and theological standpoint, there is a strong case to be made that the Canaanite woman, being a descendant of scattered Israel, could be consistent with biblical prophecy, especially if we interpret lost sheep of Israel in a broader prophetic sense, not just a geographic or tribal one. Let's explore the idea more deeply. The lost sheep of the house of Israel, who are they? Right? This phrase resonates strongly with the prophets of the Old Testament, especially in the context of the northern kingdom of Israel, the 10 tribes being scattered among the nations. Right? See Hosea, Amos, Micah. God's promise to seek and gather his people, Ezekiel 34:11-16, Jeremiah 50:6. Example, my people have been a lost sheep, their shepherds have led them astray, Jeremiah 50:6. So if we read lost sheep not just as spiritually lost Jews in Judea, but also as the scattered descendants of Israel among the nations, then yes, it would be consistent to interpret the Canaanite woman as possibly one of those lost sheep. Prophecies about the scattered tribes returning. The prophets repeatedly spoke of a future time when God would regather the children of Israel from among the Gentile nations. Hosea 1:10, right? In the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there will be where there they will be called sons of the living God. Isaiah 11:11-12, a second gathering from many nations. Amos 9:9, I will sift the house of Israel among all nations. And Ezekiel 37, the dry bones of Israel restored. So if this woman was a descendant of the Israelites scattered in Canaanite, Syrophoenician lands, her return to the Messiah in faith would be a fulfillment of prophecy, right? Faith and recognition of the Messiah. One fascinating point, the woman calls Yahweh Shai Lord, Son of David. This messianic language rooted in Israelite expectation. Why would a purely pagan Gentile use such a term? It hints she may have had some ancestral or spiritual connection to Israel, or was at least exposed to Israelite hope and scripture. All right. Number 4, New Testament echoes of scattered Israel. The idea of scattered Israel among the Gentiles continues into the New Testament. James 1:1, to the 12 tribes in the dispersion. 1 Peter 1:1, to God's elect, exiles scattered throughout the Greek diaspora. Romans 9 and 11. Paul speaks of the remnant of Israel and the Gentiles' inclusion in the promises. So early believers were aware of the scattered tribes and the gospel reaching them as seen as God's faithfulness to his covenant. So, yes, interpreting the Canaanite woman as a descendant of scattered Israel is consistent with biblical prophecy, especially when viewed through the lens of the lost sheep as scattered Israel, not just Judean Jews, the prophetic promises of restoring and regathering, and her recognition of Yahushua as the son of David. While the text of Matthew identifies her as a Canaanite, likely her cultural / ethnic surroundings, she may still have been descended from the Israelites who assimilated into Gentile populations over generations, which aligns with the very prophecies Yahushua came to fulfill. This interpretation adds a rich prophetic depth to the story and reinforces the idea that Yahushua's mission to Israel included regathering the lost tribes from among the nations. You see? So these Christians make what we're teaching sound crazy and absurd. But even the AI will tell you that what we're teaching makes the most sense, especially if you're taking into context prophecy. I ain't got nothing else to say. What else needs to be said, man? The spirit of Yahweh Shai is the spirit of prophecy. And Christianity don't deal with prophecy, man. Point blank, period. They just got a rhetoric. That's all it is. So if that, I'm going to say shalom.